Hi everyone, this is part 3 in a webinar series about writing with sources. And this video is going to focus on analyzing and synthesizing source information. So basically, what do you do with your sources once you found some good ones? How do you start pulling them into your paper and writing with them? So you found some good sources. Now what? Here we go. The first thing is analysis. It comes before synthesis because what you're doing with analysis is just trying to figure out what is each one of your sources about. What does it mean? What's the argument? How does it build that argument? What are the pieces of evidence that the source is using to support their ultimate claim? Are you finding it credible, reliable, trustworthy? Any other kind of evaluation to make about that source? And basically, what are the most important aspects of it? And what do you understand from it? And how is it relating to your research topic in general? So to do a good analysis, you have to do a deep reading of that text. You have to break it down into its parts to understand the whole. And understand how the meaning is developed. Here's what you would do as you're analyzing a source. You're reading it and you're asking, what's the article's main argument? How does the author support that argument? That's the big idea, what you want to take away as you're figuring out what each of those sources is really about. Here's a few more tips for your analysis. I always recommend annotating your texts as you read them. So sometimes we fall out of the habit of this if we're trying to read quickly, or maybe we've checked out a book from the library and can't really annotate in it, or we're reading digitally and we don't take the time to mark it up digitally, whereas it's easier to mark up if we print it out and then just highlight or write with a pen or pencil in the margins. So there are some good tools for annotating digitally if you get in the habit of using them. But however it makes sense for you, however it's easiest for you to do, when you're trying to do that deep reading, do some kind of annotation, because that's you engaging with that text and internalizing it and not just skimming through and forgetting about it. So the things you want to do as you're annotating are highlight main ideas and important details. Make those marginal notes. That means the notes in the side next to the text. And some things you might make note of in the margins are summary of the sections of the text. So let's say you read the introduction. It's going to tell you what the main idea of the article is and maybe some context for it. So just jot some notes about that down on the side. You might get to their research methods section after that. So what are the methods? What considerations did they make? What seems important? And then, of course, you'll have your findings and conclusion sections and any other sections, depending on what kind of article it is you're reading. So take each of those sections and write yourself some summative notes about what's going on in that section and what seems important to remember. You can also make note of any connections you make. So maybe this is connections from this source to another source, what seems familiar or maybe different between those sources, connections you make with this source and your research topic, or things that you've been learning about in class, maybe connections between this source and something you've experienced personally. Any kind of connection here that's going to make something from that text stick with you, or connect it to other things that you're reading and considering as part of your research for this project. You can also ask yourself some questions about that text in the margins. So maybe you read something that is kind of confusing to you, or you disagree with it for some reason. It's a good time to just stop and jot those down, because it might be something you want to return to later and dig into a little bit more deeply. And it could even be a red flag that maybe you don't want to use that source in the end. So after you've finished analyzing your sources, you have a really solid understanding of what each of those sources is about. Then you want to start moving towards synthesis. Now, synthesis in comparison to analysis has more to do with bringing the ideas from all the different sources together again in a new way to make some new meaning out of all that source information. So, analysis is breaking down each source to understand them better, and synthesis is bringing multiple sources together again to understand something about the larger topic that connects them all. So, as I said, it involves making connections between your sources, bringing those ideas together again in a way that makes sense to you based on your understanding of the different sources. And because synthesis depends on identifying relationships between ideas, here are the things that you want to look for as you're working on synthesizing source information. Look for similarities, trends, and patterns. Also look for differences, divergences, and opposition. So where does one source contradict another, or where are two sources making similar arguments, although they might be using different research methods or coming from different fields or something like that. So they can have different things going on with them, not just in their overall argument, but in the way that those arguments are developed. And also in the context for the articles or the purpose and motivation for the authors to write those articles. Look at all those different elements, all the different pieces of each source that you examined when you were doing your analysis, and then start bringing those different ideas together and thinking about how they relate to one another, what's similar and different between them. And how does it help you understand your research topic as well? So just to recap here, we have this helpful chart that shows the difference between analysis and synthesis. We have analysis as breaking down a single text into its components to understand how those components work together to make the meaning of that text. And then we have, on the other hand, synthesis is pulling ideas from multiple sources to better understand something about that single topic. One other thing to keep in mind is as you're synthesizing your source information, that can really help you with the organization of your paper in the end. So if you're thinking about how are you going to organize all these different ideas that you've been grappling with about your research topic, think about what are the trends that came up as you were contemplating how your different sources related to one another. So maybe those trends are going to end up being your paragraphs or your sections in your paper, and they're going to help guide you and your readers through that topic and get you toward the meaning that you want to end up with. I have a few final thoughts for you on this topic of analyzing and synthesizing source information. Once you've found your good sources that are related to your research topic, definitely make sure that you understand each of those sources individually and that you understand how they each relate to one another and your overall topic. Finally, think about how has your research helped you to better understand the specific topic that you were looking into to start with, and what has your process of inquiry compelled you to want to share with your readers. So it's really a matter of using that source information for the purpose of engaging with your research topic and then engaging your audience in that research topic as well. How are they going to help? How are the sources that you're looking at? How are they going to help you accomplish that goal? And just a reminder, the Writing Center is here for you with online appointments. Here's where you can go to make an appointment to meet with a writing tutor online, and they can always help you figure out how to do that difficult work of analyzing and synthesizing the sources that you want to use for the research project that you're working on.